What is cracking, everybody? We are back after a week off, fired up to jump back into the college football streets here for what is going to be a pretty wild week 9. As if college football hasn't been wild enough to start the year, I think we are in it for once. So before we get rolling here and hitting on the DraftKings slate, early slate, main slate, whatever you want to call it, please hit that thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I've got my Twitter or X handle down here in the corner and would love to interact and talk smack with the rest of you as these games go on, leading up to kick and all that. So before we dive in, let's go ahead and just lay it out. Big slate here. We've got some interesting teams on the slate, which we haven't quite seen all year long. Navy jumping on the scene. We've got a North Texas and Tulane matchup here. Oklahoma's on the slate, fired their OC, old quarterback back in the saddle. Indiana's without their starting quarterback. Mizzou's probably without their starting quarterback. So, man, we've got a pretty wild one here. And I think it's going to take quite a bit of gamesmanship to kind of figure out how you want to approach this. So let's just rock and roll and jump in. I'm going to try to keep this pretty tight, pretty quick, and not take too much of everybody's time. So first up, we got Notre Dame playing against Navy, where the Irish are a 13-point favorite. That's up from like 11 earlier this week. I think Notre Dame's very playable here. Riley Leonard has been awesome in terms of, especially on the ground, but he's been starting to find his groove a little bit through the air as well. At 8,800, I think he's a pretty good play here on the slate, to be totally honest with you. Like always, there's going to be some high-priced quarterbacks, but where I've been making most of my money this year has been in kind of that 7 to 8K range, kind of in that middle tier, and being able to pay up for a few more studs in my lineup. So Riley Leonard, I think he's definitely in a good spot here. You know, Navy plays obviously good football, tough football, fundamentals, everything like that, but they can give it up on the ground. So I think has all the makings for Riley here, as well as Jeremiah Love, to have pretty good days. Like always, I'm probably not touching the passing game, although, you know, the one thing you could say about Notre Dame's receivers is they are cheap. Bo Collins, Jaden Greathouse are probably the two best options if you want to go there, but it's definitely not necessary with Leonard. He can definitely get there by himself, and he usually does. So Leonard and Love for me on Notre Dame are the only two that I have interest in. I think Navy's a little bit interesting here. They're going to come in super low owned because all you hear is this vaunted Notre Dame defense, and nobody can score on them. They're amazing, all this stuff. But look, Navy runs kind of like a weird, interesting hybrid, veer wing T type offense. It's very untraditional. If you don't play against it a whole lot, obviously it can catch you by surprise, which is where their advantage lies. Blake Horvath at 8,400 and Eli Heidenreich, great name, are the two guys in this offense that you're probably going to want pieces of if you decide to go this route. The one thing I'll say is these guys are going to be very low owned, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, no way, I don't want any piece of it. But if Navy's going to win this game, they're going to control the ball, run the ball, keep Notre Dame off the field. And you never know, man. This is Navy's Super Bowl. This is an opportunity for them to knock off Notre Dame here. This is going to be a pretty awesome game, I think. So I like this one a little bit just to get contrarian. Next up, Tulane, North Texas. Tulane's an 8-point road favorite. One thing I'll say, they're pretty balanced overall in terms of like their approach, about 50-50 in terms of where they go in terms of run versus pass, I should say. Mensah at 5K. Man, I want to take some shots on this guy because, where are you going to get a 5K quarterback here in this situation? But every time I do, it is really hit or miss if he's going to pay off or not. I've definitely played him when he's had great games and helped me take down, maybe not a full room, but like definitely cash and make some good change here. But he has definitely had games where they really lean on Mekhi Hughes, and that's the route that they decide to take that. And so, just like anything, GPP play for me. But I will take some shots, I think, on Mensah this week because, again, 5K allows you to get some of these really high-priced guys into your lineup. So 5K, you can't really beat it. Hughes, I also have some interest in 7,400. Pretty good price tag for him. He will be owned though. So that's another reason why I like Mensa a little bit in the passing attack is, I don't think they're going to completely cut Hughes out of the game plan or anything like that, but it is a way to get a little bit different and contrarian with your lineup. So Mario Williams, Dante Fleming are the two receivers that you're probably going to want pieces of, but Brown and Bauman's the tight end. Those guys also see kind of like a 4-man rotation. They're all about 50 to 60% in terms of snap shares. So I think you could take shots on all these guys, but Mario Williams, Dante Fleming are probably the two favorite targets here. And like I said, Hughes, I'll have some interest in too. Chandler Morris, 8,900 is probably a little too expensive for me on the other side for North Texas. Shane Porter, however, is a good price discount, 3,800. He's probably the lead back, although he's not going to be like major workload here. But at 3,800, again, if you're trying to jam some of these high-priced guys, I think you could do much worse than Shane Porter for North Texas. 3,800 shouldn't be highly owned. I already got him in one lineup as I was messing around playing with it. So, yeah, I think Shane Porter's interesting. DT Sheffield is their number one target. He's on the field definitely more than all the other guys. Sees more targets than all the other guys. So, if you're going to go to Chandler Morris, this is your guy, DT Sheffield. But again, passing attack's not really something where I'm going to lean to, even though they've got a 29.5 point total. So this one does have some interest, I think, from around the industry. It will be just a little bit different. I don't think people know really how to play North Texas. So I'll probably count myself in that as well. Next up, Ole Miss hosts Jackson Arnold back at the helm in Oklahoma with a new OC. Man, I want to take some shots on Jackson Arnold as well. The problem is all of his receivers are still hurt. Deion Burks, I don't think is going to play. If I'm incorrect on that, please, don't come down on me hard. If Deion Burks is in, I have a lot more interest in Jackson Arnold here. I think Oklahoma's very much in mode right now of like, we got nothing to lose. We need to see what we got in this kid, Jackson Arnold, and see if, this is going to be a kid of our future. Michael Hawkins, I know he's young, did not look like the kid for the future, so they got to figure this thing out. New OC, we'll see what they can bring to the table, but they are a 20-point road dog. So I would have to lean that not a lot, but 6,100. If Burks is in, I will dabble a little bit with Jackson Arnold. But other than that, man, I'm not really taking a whole lot of shots in Oklahoma. They've just been absolutely putrid on offense. It's just not really for me. Ole Miss, 20-point favorite. They're in a great spot here at home. Oklahoma's defense is good, but Jackson Dart, you've got Trey Harris and Antoine Wells at receiver, Watson, Priestor, Lee. You've got a lot of guys in this receiving room who can do damage. I think for me, if I'm going to attack it, it's going to be probably more through the passing game. Like I said, Oklahoma's D is still solid, and they do rotate a little bit. I know Parrish is the guy that leads the charge here in the backfield, but Bentley's an interesting play as well. 3K flat, that's got a little bit of interest for me. But I think if I'm going this direction, I'm probably taking the Ole Miss passing game and just hoping that Dart and let's say Harris at really, really high price and very low ownership absolutely crush this thing and knock it out of the park versus Oklahoma. I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said, I think Oklahoma still has some pride, and I think the defense is what all they have to hang their hat on. So just don't see the ceiling spot here for Ole Miss. But again, low ownership for these guys, and they are explosive. Up next, we got game day here. Washington goes to Indiana. Washington's a 6.5-point road favorite. Look, I'll be honest. I feel like I'm taking Washington and the points here. I think Jed Fish and this team is very interesting. They are not great, but we have seen them in certain spots look good. And I think they're going to be hyped up here and an opportunity to spoil Indiana's season. Indiana is also missing Curtis Rourke in this one. I know Indiana's got a very good team. Their coach is, a total hard ass. The guy's the man. But I think this is just a tough spot for Indiana. Like the whole season and like everybody's eyes are on you for the first time and you're going into this environment without your starting quarterback. I think that's pretty tough. People like Traven Jackson. He's 6,600 here. Some running ability for sure. But man, it's just, I don't know. If Indiana knocks this out of the park, like they're absolutely for real. And again, it's not that Washington are world beaters, but they're not pushovers either. Washington's I think, a pretty decent and tough team. But I think Indiana is still interesting. I'm going to be leaning more Indiana running attack here with Ellison and Lawton. Both of these guys definitely get work, but they get used in the passing attack as well. Both projected around the same. They're both cheap, and we've seen both of them kind of get loose in games. And I just have to think that Indiana is going to lean a little bit more into that this week, using them in the passing game and whatnot with their backup quarterback at the helm. But you never know. These guys could definitely come out and just absolutely surprise me. But as a team that passed, 60% of the time leading up to this point, I can't imagine that's going to go this way with a backup quarterback. But that's just my initial gut instinct and take here. Washington, on the other hand, I have some interest in as, again, I think a sneaky contrarian play here. Will Rogers, 5,600. The guy's been in school for 12 years. Nothing's going to phase him in terms of the environment, how crazy Bloomington's going to be. So I like Rogers. I like Jonah Coleman in this one. And then I think Boston is and Jackson are definitely interesting GPP plays for sure. I'm going to take some shots on this one for Washington is pulling the upset, road dog. Indiana, yeah, they're going to be hyped up and everything, but this is not what you would consider a hostile environment like Autzen or, some other Big Ten or SEC schools. So that's my kind of bold take here on the slate. Washington is interesting to me with some pieces of Indiana. On the other one, I'll keep this pretty brief. I don't have a whole lot of interest in Nebraska here. I think Ohio State is going to be absolutely out for blood coming off of a bye week at home. They got Penn State looming here in a few weeks. They know that this is how they get on track, absolutely blow Nebraska out at home and move on to the big showdown with the Nittany Lions. So needless to say, I have interest in Ohio State, though. Will Howard at 7,900 is a very good price tag, no doubt about it. I think Judkins and Henderson, if you want to go that way, you can. I haven't really all season, and it hasn't really killed me. They just split too much work, and there's just too many mouths to feed on that offense. But Henderson being down now at 6K, if you want to go there, there's worse plays for sure on the slate. I'm going to be going at the passing attack, though. Howard, Egbuka, and Jeremiah Smith, I think, for me, are my favorites in this one. And I think, like I said, I think Ohio State rocks these guys coming off of a bye here. So that's my kind of lean on this one. If you think Ohio State gets back to basics, Chip Kelly, and they come out and run the ball 50 times, I wouldn't totally disagree with you here. But the strength of Nebraska is more in their front seven and the rushing defense. So I think Ohio State airs it out at home here and lets it fly. Next up, Missouri at Alabama. Drew Pine is expected to start. Drew Pine is not very good. Marcus Carroll, Nate Noel, still some uncertainty in what's going to happen there in the backfield. And then you've got Luther Burden, who I think is a great GPP play, but he is very expensive, 7,500. I can't do it, man. Mizzou just doesn't look very good right now, obviously, hence the spread being 16.5-point road dog. I know everybody's taking Alabama out to the woodshed and shooting them dead, but I'm not ready to go there quite yet. Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. This team still has talent. Tennessee's a good football team. I know everybody's down on them. It was how could Alabama lose that game? That didn't shock me whatsoever. The Vanderbilt game was shocking, but not Tennessee. So for me, I think at home versus a beaten up and beat down Missouri team, this is kind of similar to Ohio State. I think this is where Alabama kind of gets things back on track. We've just seen it too many times. I know the book's not being written by Nick Saban here, but I think Jalen Milroe's in a pretty good spot here. 10-3, he's going to have moderate ownership, if not low ownership. So for me, I'm going to take some shots here on Milroe. The problem is, again, like I told you at the beginning of the slate, I just think there's too much value in the 7 and 8K range. You don't have to do it. But, man, if Milroe runs in 2 touchdowns and throws for 3 more, you're going to want some 5% on Jalen Milroe, I feel like. So Milroe for me, it's going to be Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams at receiver. Jeremy's really, really cheap, 4,200. Ryan Williams getting up there at 71, but those are kind of my leans in this one. Alabama, I'm looking at pretty similar to Ohio State, where I want some pieces in case these guys come out, foaming out the mouth and absolutely put up a 50 burger on this guy. So that's how I'm looking at it. Next up, BYU UCF. I have interest all over this game. I have interest in both quarterbacks, Retzlaff and Brown, 7K, 8K. Yeah, fire it up for me. Absolutely. I have interest in both running backs, LJ Martin, 6,200, RJ Harvey, 9,200. I think the receiving core, UCF's a little bit challenging for me. Kobe Hudson at 52. Brown's not the best passer, but if he is going to pass, it's going to Kobe Hudson. So I will take some shots there. BYU, it's Darius Lassiter, Chase Roberts. I like this game because, I think this one has a fairly good total. I think both teams can shoot out. They could score, especially BYU on the road. You can get them a little bit more than you can at home. But it's very concentrated, these offenses. So this is a good spot, I think, for DFS specifically. Next up, Texas Tech at TCU. Kind of the same thing. I mean, Texas Tech's a little bit more spread out, but I have interest in Morton Brooks at the receiver position, Kelly, Douglas, Eakin. If you're looking at it from a snap share and everything else, Kelly, Eakin, and Douglas are by far your top guys, with Kelly leading the charge as the number one. Taj Brooks absolutely dominates the targets or the rushing attempts in the backfield. And Morton, good spot. He's had a really good year for the most part. All these guys, low to moderate ownership. So Tech for me, I think, is solid here. And the good thing about Texas Tech is they can't really stop anybody. So you can play that hoping it, this is one of those full game stacking opportunities, in my opinion. TCU, it's Josh Hoover, obviously at quarterback. He's going to be pretty highly owned. The passing attack will be kind of overall. I think if you're looking at it in general, Beck is the number one in terms of snap share and targets per game. But Savion Williams is just mispriced, in my opinion. 5,100. He's going to be pretty chalky, but I think the way you do it is you overstack this one. You go Hoover, Savion, and maybe add a third guy in there, whether that be JP Richardson, Jack Beck, or McAllister. So I again, just like the last game, Tech and TCU, I like spots all over the place for both of these ones. Going up to Autzen, Oregon as hosting Illinois. I don't really know what to think about this one. Illinois is a tougher team than people think. They always are. We've seen Belima pull off miracles before and have his team ready to play in these spots. I just don't know if this is quite that spot. I will take some shots, though, on Josh McCray at running back, 4K. Shouldn't be that highly owned. He is a guy that can have a pretty good day here versus Oregon's rush defense, which I know they showed up for Ohio State, but before that they were getting kind of gashed. So it's hard to tell if they fixed something or if they were just amped up and juiced for that matchup. So, but a 4K, again, you're not burning a ton of salary. I like that a little bit. If you think Oregon takes a huge lead and there's a good game script, I think you can look to Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. But again, just not really the best spot in my opinion. Oregon, on the other hand, Dylan Gabriel's, he's not going to be highly owned, but he's very expensive, which is tough. Jordan James, 7,800, great spot for him. But again, 7,800 gets a little bit more challenging. And then you start looking at the receiving core, Johnson, Stewart, Holden. The next few games, Minnesota, Brosmer's okay, 5K. I like Darius Taylor as well and Daniel Jackson against this Maryland defense that can't stop anybody. I think Billy Edwards is interesting, as well as Felton and Prather. And then if you're going down a little bit more, let's see here. Is that it for these games? What do we got here? I'm going to cover Oregon State and Cal real quick. For Oregon State, yeah, I got some interest. Giovanni McCoy, Anthony Hankerson, Trent Walker, all those guys, fire them up. I think this is a pretty interesting game as well. Cal's defense is fine, but we've seen Cal before get in these weird games where things kind of pop off and things get crazy. So Hankerson, Walker, with Jam Griffin, I think, out. And then Cal, it's Mendoza, Ott, and injuries. That's it, guys. Good luck this weekend. Hopefully you have a solid output. Hit me up on the socials or drop something in the comments if you have guys that I missed. cutting it right in the 20-minute mark. And good luck. Talk to you later.